3. Yep, good. Thank you for doing that. And we've got the meeting being recorded. So first thing we're going to do is review the quiz questions. And we basically are just going over the questions that were most missed. Rule 4, which we talked about most last week, you actually all did a pretty good job on. There were only a few questions that really gave everybody a lot of trouble. Rule 1 and 2, which I kind of glossed over more last week, you kind of showed it a little bit more in some of the answers to the quiz questions there. So here's the first one that had relatively few correct answers. We have A4 dribbling the basketball. B4 reaches out and slaps the ball out of bounds while accidentally hitting A4's dribbling hand. Is it a foul? Anybody want to venture a guess? You've got a 50-50 chance at this.
Well,
how many of you have played basketball? This is one of the times where coaches and fans, when they yell from the stands, actually got it right? Where they'll sit there and say, hey, the hand is part of the ball. And in fact, they're right? So it's not a foul. And it's Rule 424-2, which says, accidental contact with the hand that's holding or dribbling the ball is not a foul. Okay, so same thing with blocking the shot. If you're blocking the shot and you're hitting the shooting hand and the ball's in the shooting hand, it's not a foul. Now, if you're hitting the wrist, that's a different story. If you're hitting the arm, it's a different story. But if you're hitting the hand, it's not. So there's a rule reference there that you can look it up and see that it's true. A1 in the backcourt attempts to pass to A2 in the front court. A2 fumbles the ball and the ball bounces back to A1, still standing in the backcourt. Is it a violation? We got some yeses. Yep.
Somebody be brave.
It is indeed a violation.
has to be.
Right? So, and it has to do with what status the ball has. So the ball comes out of the backcourt, having touched A1, goes into the front court. Now you have front court status with the ball, kind of gets bobbled around by A2 in the front court, and then comes back into the backcourt where A1 picks it up. So it's had front court status. The last team to touch it in the front court was A. The first team to touch it in the backcourt was A. It is indeed a violation. A trickier question would have been, it gets thrown into the front court, it hits the official in the front court, and it goes back into the back court. Is it a violation? Anybody want to take a crack at that?
No. No.
We got a lot of no's.
Why? Why, Glenn?
Part of the court, right? If it's inadvertent.
So the rule actually states that it is in fact a violation. So that if you have taken the ball from the backcourt, put it into the front court, it comes back to the backcourt and you touch it, and the only thing it is touched is the playing court, which kind of by definition is by hitting the official is considered part of the playing court. It is a backcourt violation. So I didn't go and make it as tricky as a question as I could have on that one.
So a clarifying question though, if I may ask. So if the offensive player didn't touch the ball and the defense, and they're scrambling for the ball in the backcourt, and the defensive touches it first before the offensive gets the ball back, it's not a backcourt violation. Is that correct?
So the kind of the phrase that you can run through your mind is last to touch in the front court, first to touch in the backcourt. It's a violation if that's the offensive team. But if there's a touch in the backcourt by the defender first, then that's not a violation. Okay.
So I'm sorry, just one. So I'm in the backcourt. I'm just passing it over the center line. That's all. It's just a pass. Mm-hmm. It hits the referee in the back and then bounces back to me. Yep. I still have not crossed half court.
Yep.
That is by definition a violation.
Yes, sir.
Because it'd be like he's a part of the basketball court.
Ball got into the front court. and came back into the backcourt with no defender touching it.
Gotcha.
You're the
Gotcha.
first one to touch it in the backcourt, it's a violation.
Okay.
So is there any time where the ball can cross half court and come back to the backcourt and it be not a violation?
Tipped by the defender, or touched
Okay.
by the defender first.
Gotcha. Okay.
Or if the guy is dribbling the ball and his legs are in the backcourt and he dribbles to the front and brings it back, that's still okay.
Because all
Excellent.
three have to
All
pass.
3 points have to be across.
Excellent.
I think the key is that, and you know, I have to admit, until a few years ago, I didn't realize this. The way the ball achieves front court status is it touches the floor or touches somebody in the front court, right? So if the ball's in the air, you know, it's not, and it's hovering over front court, it's still not achieved front court status. But once it touches the ref, who's part of the floor, unfortunately, I hate that. Yeah, then it's achieved front court status and it goes into the back court. So just remember that.
Okay. B5 is boxing out by turning his back to A5, making contact and then pushing back 2 steps. Is this legal? And, you know, trying to write this in a question maybe can be a little confusing, but basically boxing out and pushing pushing A5 back 2 steps. Do we think it's legal or not?
Well,
No.
Not anymore. I would have said yes
A
until
few of you definitely, more than a few of you thought it was legal, right? Because that's the way you got taught how to box out. And if you're Stacy and my age, you definitely got taught to box out this way. For you
We
younger
still-
folks, hopefully that's changed along the way. But in fact, it's not legal. You know, they talk about not you know, moving. You can turn your back to the player, but you can't displace them or you can't move them out of the way. You know, every player has the right to their space on the floor. You can't dislodge them from their space on the floor. So it's not legal to box out by getting, you know, into that person who's behind you and then just pushing them 5 feet out of the way. It's a foul. And it's one of the things as officials that we're really being trained to look at more and more these days.
It's good to know that. It's still taught at every level that I've ever seen, including now, like at the high school and college levels. The only time I ever see it called, though, ever, is over the back. I see
No
those calls
such
all the time.
animal.
What's that?
There's no such animal. We'll get to Rule 10 and the definitions, although we've got a little bit on the definitions of fouls, but there's no such animal as over the back. And you're really
They call it a push usually, but
correct.
yeah, okay.
And that's a call that's being made on the player who's in the less advantageous position, right? The guy is behind the person, right? But the
Yeah.
person who's doing the boxing out does not have the right to push that other person backwards.
That's amazing. It's good.
And I would actually hope that in college these days, there aren't very many coaches that are teaching that anymore.
Ugh. I don't know.
In high school, I won't give them as much benefit of that doubt. All right, those were the questions that were most missed on quiz 4. Did anybody have anything else that they wanted to review on quiz 4? Okay, let's keep going. Quiz 1. This I need to get this thing out of here because I hate this kind of level of precision because there's just no doubt you're not like marking off, and who cares what the answer to this question. So I'm going to get rid of this for next year. So the free throw line is 15 feet from the middle of the basket. A lot of you thought the answer to that was yes. If you're able to actually go into the book and read, you would see that Rule 1.6 shows you that the answer is no. And does anybody want to kind of take a guess as to what it is instead?
It's at the base of the rim.
Where is it again?
The base of the rim.
Kind of the plane of the backboard,
The backboard.
right? From the plane of the backboard to the free throw line is 15 feet. And then, so if you're really good, is it the beginning of the free throw line or is it the back of the free throw line?
I thought it was
Back.
Closer to the half court, right? That's the part that's close to the half court. An item that you should never have to know.
I got it wrong. So
No, and again, somewhat I'm complaining to myself about writing something like that because it's really in the scheme of rules that I need you to remember, that's not one of them. An X marking where subs should wait to be beckoned into the game should be located no closer than 5 feet from the end of each team bench. So 1 X for each team's bench. Right or wrong?
No,
So what's the X used for?
should be in the center.
Where is it actually supposed to be specifically? It says in the rule book where it should be.
Front of the
Nick-
score table.
In front of the scorer, right? So they basically want to give the subs a clue as to where they should go to tell the scorer that they're reporting into the game. In high school now, they want the scorers to also wear striped shirts. We would tell you that always doesn't happen, but and frankly, the X isn't always directly in front of the scorer, but that's what it's supposed to be. And there's 1, there's not 2 for each team. Any other questions on rule 1? Okay, rule 2. Before the game, while the referee checks the scorebooks, actually, that's a typo by my part. The umpire is responsible to verify with the coaches that team member uniforms are legal, they're going to be worn properly, and the participants will exhibit sporting behavior throughout the game. What do people think?
That was
Yeah.
listed under referees' jobs.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, referee's job, right? So, and what we typically will do, non-COVID protocols, is go over as a crew, first to the visiting team, and then to the home team, and basically ask those questions. We also ask about whether they have a concussion professional there that can handle if a player gets taken out with concerns over concussion. But it's considered a referee responsibility, not an umpire responsibility. And I would kind of say it's a crew responsibility.
4 game.
And there's your rule reference, 245. A1 is followed by B1. This is B's 7th foul of the half. The scorer fails to inform the officials, and team A inbounds the ball instead of shooting free throws, and A2 scores. Prior to B being in position to inbound the ball, the scorer sounds the horn and informs the official that the foul was team's 7th on team B. The officials nullify A2's score and has A1 shoot 1-and-1 with the players lined up along the lane line, correct? So the first thing that I would say is this is why we would really like everybody to try to not end up having correctable errors in their games. You know, have your own awareness of what the foul counts are, check with the table when you think there's like 3 or 4 or 5 fouls on a team so that you can kind of keep it in your own head when you get up to 6 or 7. When you're in a high school game, oftentimes there will be the foul count up on the scoreboard, but when you're doing other levels that you would not end up having that situation. So this is kind of an interesting one to break down a little bit. So what do we think? Was this correct or incorrect?
Correct.
Got a correct and we got maybe incorrect. So it's not correct, but let's find out why. So the first question is it a correctable error? And the answer would be yes, because one of the things about, correctable errors are mostly about messing up free throws and then failure to count a basket, failure or to count or counting something that you shouldn't have counted in terms of a score. But generally speaking, it has to do with free throws, right? So we failed to give a free throw, a merited free throw. So it is in fact a correctable error. So, and then in what time period can the correctable error be found and then corrected? And when the ball's dead, when the error happens, which in this case it was, there was a blown whistle, the ball was dead. You put the ball back in play, you have to correct the error before the next live ball. And in this situation, the ball went through, A2 scored. When you score, the ball becomes dead. And before B was ready to inbound the ball, which would have made it live again, the horn went off and the scorekeeper said, I screwed up. So you got a correctable error in the time frame that you can correct it. And then what did they end up doing? They nullified A2's score. That was the first mistake, right? Because they should have counted the score. And instead of having A1 shoot with players along the lane lines, they have A1, they should have had A1 shoot. And then they have the ball come in at kind of the point of interruption. And the point of interruption was the made basket. So B should have had the ball on the end line running it. So they should have counted A2's basket. They then give A1 2 free throws. So B's coach is like not happy because they've scored and they get free throws. And then they give B the ball on the end line after the free throws are made. And this question, which is 201 or 301 refereeing, there's clearly varsity officials that would be challenged with this question. Kind of just to me reinforces the idea of let's not have correctable errors if at all possible. Okay. Anybody got any questions on that?
I'm sure it's clear as mud to everyone.
Yeah, it is ugly.
Official nullifies A2's.
Last couple here. So after correcting an error, the ball is always put into play at the point of interruption.
Yes.
So there's an exception to this, right? The answer is no, it's
No.
false. So if the error was corrected and in that last scenario, instead of giving A1 free throws, A took the ball out of bounds and they're dribbling along and the horn goes off right there, we would be able to correct the error by just putting A1 on the free throw line, having everybody line up and just go along, right? Because nothing had happened along the way. No score, no nothing. It's just like, oops, screwed up, put the ball in play. Let's take it out of play, put the A1 on the free throw line, and then just play it as if, so you don't start with point of interruption, you just do the free throws. Again, just kind of reinforces the challenge of correctable errors. And the last one that was several misses here, points scored by a player who was disqualified, but is still playing shall be nullified. And the answer to that is no. You don't nullify the player's scores. Whatever happened along the way while he was in the game is counted. And then as soon as you find out that he shouldn't be in the game, you take him out. Okay. That's it for quiz 2, unless anybody has any other questions on quiz 2, section 2. Okay, we're ready to roll. All right, so we talked last week about rule 4 being kind of maybe the most important rule in the rule book. Rule 9 and then rule 10 are my other 2 most important rules. You got to kind of know what the violations are, and you got to know what the consequences of the violations are, and you got to know what the consequences of the fouls are. Right, so let's go through rule 9. And I'm only emphasizing parts of rule 9. I'm going through every single violation, but read the rest of the rule book. But here's some of the things that are maybe a little bit more complicated. So free throws. After the ball is placed at the disposal of the free thrower, you bounce it to it, he catches it, she catches it, they're ready to shoot their free throw. They get 10 seconds to shoot. Most everybody knows that. And unless your name is Giannis, nobody ever gets called for a violation for not having to shot the free throw in 10 seconds. It's mind boggling that we all sit there and say we've never done it, but voila, there it is in the NBA. You can't fake to cause the opponent to violate. So either the offensive team kind of stutter steps their way in, or the free throw shooter kind of fakes a shot, or the defensive team kind of jumps in and tries to fake. Can't fake in order to cause the opponent to violate. No distracting the thrower. Can't wave your arms, you can't make noise. They used to have the word disconcertion in the rule book, but nobody knew what it meant, so I think they took it out. But you can't distract the free throw shooter. Makes sense. The thrower can't have his foot break the vertical plane of the free throw line until the ball touches the ring or the free throw ends, right? So the foot can't break the plane of the free throw line until the ball touches the rim. And the feet of the players not on the lane lines can't break the vertical plane of the free throw line and the 3-point line. So anybody not on the lane lines needs to stand behind the 3-point line and in back of the free throw line, extended, right? And can't break that plane until after the ball touches the rim again. I've got some clips here, which hopefully makes some of this clearer. And the feet of the players on the lane line can't break the plane until the ball's released. They changed that rule easily 5 years ago, probably more. We used to have to wait until the ball hit the rim, but now the players can come into the lane after the ball has been released by the thrower. And finally, the players can't enter the semicircle where the thrower is coming into the free throw lane line until the ball touches the ring or the free throw ends. So coaches sometimes will have, the guy at the very top of the line wanting to box out the free throw shooter. They can't penetrate that free throw lane line until the ball touches the ring. Okay. Any questions on that?
Yeah, so when the free thrower shoots the ball, let's see, feet of players on line can't break plane of any edge of lane space until ball is released. Is it ball of release or until the ball touches the rim? I thought it was the rim.
But in fact, it's released.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
I know there's
so you're lined up along the line. You got the 3 spaces on each side of the line. And when the free thrower lets go of the ball, releases the ball for a shot, those people on the lane lines can come into the lane.
Oh, okay.
And that also talks about going between spaces, right? So your feet can't actually start boxing out the person next to you, crossing across into their space until after the ball has been released as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Steve, how about lining up? Do both? So you essentially have a box there. You got a small rectangle. All 3 spaces have a little, so you see a lot of players trying to get an angle, and they got a foot or, they're trying to get a better angle. So do both feet have to be in that box?
They have to be in the box, but they don't have to be all the way to the front of the box.
They don't have to be all the way.
I may have skipped that one in terms of hang on a second.
Yeah, so you have the hash marks, if you're on the lane line.
Yeah.
So you have to stay between the hash marks, behind the lane line, and within 3 feet of the lane line.
Oh,
Okay, so you have a little box that you have to stay in until the ball is released.
Yeah, so it's 9.3G, which says a player occupying a marked lane space may not have either foot beyond the vertical plane, which is what I talked about here.
Okay.
Or beyond the vertical plane of any edge. A player shall position 1 foot near the outer edge of the free throw lane line. So you need to be close to the free throw lane line with 1 foot. The other foot may be positioned anywhere in the designated 36-inch lane space until the ball is released. So 1 foot needs to be close to the lane line. The other foot can be back 3 feet.
Okay, so, 3 feet for most people, unless you're 6'9". Most people, that's about
I'm
as
hopeful
far as
that 3 feet is 3 feet, no matter if you're 6'9" or 2'9", but
yeah, gotcha. 2'9". Okay.
Well, 2'9" might make 3 feet, I believe.
Could be kids. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the penalties for rule 9.1. If the first violation is by the thrower or the teammate, the ball's dead and no points are scored. So the guy in the second lane line jumps in too early, the ball becomes dead immediately, and no points are scored. If the violation is only by the opponent of the thrower, you wait. You have a delayed dead ball, because if the free thrower shoots and it goes in, we ignore everything and just move on, because they got the benefit of what they wanted by making the free throw. If the try's not good, we do a substitute free throw. So defense gets in too soon, you have a signal for it, which you'll see it when you do the mechanics class of a delayed dead ball. The ball goes in, play on. The ball misses, we shoot another free throw. kind of easy. Those two, I think, are relatively simple. Okay, simultaneous violations by each team. You know, for the offensive team and the defensive team goes in and violates basically at the same time. Again, the ball becomes dead and no points are scored. And if there's no more free throws, if it was the first of 2 free throws, you just shoot the second one. The first one is over. If there's no more free throws, the ball's awarded by the Apparel because there was just basically no possession at that point in time. So whoever is entitled to the Apparel gets the ball out of bounds at that point in time. So simultaneous violations. And if the violation is first by the opponent of the thrower and then by the thrower or the teammate, so the opponent violates first and then the offensive team violates second. If both offenders are on the lane spaces, you just ignore the second one. So the first lane space, the guy goes in early. The second lane space goes in after that, following them. You just ignore that one. You don't call that violation. And then you would have. So if the shot goes in, there's no consequence. If the shot's missed, there's a delayed dead ball, and you would issue a second free throw, a substitute free throw. If the second violation is by the thrower not in the lane space, you penalize it the same thing as a simultaneous violation. So defender goes in first, offensive player behind the three-point line comes in later, or even maybe more likely, the free thrower shoots an air ball. That's considered the same as a simultaneous violation, and no points can be scored. Okay, I got some clips. Let me see if I can manage to do this again today without messing this up too badly. Sorry, I messed up. There it is. All right, so I need to move this back because I want to start over. All right, so here we are. He's on, ready to shoot his free throw. And ignore this. Some of this stuff is international stuff that I got clips of, and so just kind of ignore some of this stuff. But so here's the offensive player moving in first. What would happen? I'll show you.
Dead ball. That shot doesn't count.
Dead ball,
If the-
shot doesn't
the Second
count.
shot, you go straight to the second shot. If not, you go to the other team's ball.
Good. The officials ended up having to get together and decide what was going on along the line, but at the end of the day, they got the call correct. Okay. Okay. So watch this play. Anybody see anything there yet?
Yeah, the person shooting a free throw crossed the line before the ball hit the rim. Therefore, it should have been a dead ball and been the white team's possession.
Okay, let's watch it a second time. Watch 23 white. Now what do we call?
Reshoot.
They would call a violation on 23 white, and then so black would get another shot.
Well, so 23 white violated first, right? And then the free throw shooter wearing black violated second, right? And one of the violations was outside the lane line, the other one was inside the lane line.
Simultaneous.
Yep. So you have two violations. You basically end up having the same as a simultaneous violation. So that free throw wouldn't count, and then it's point of interruption, or if you have a second shot, you would give them the second shot. That's a pretty cool clip. I like that one.
That's a really good one.
So then in that case, if it's a 1-and-1, did he get the second shot for the 1-and-1, or it's a play on?
No, because you're not entitled to the second one unless you've made the first one, and by definition, you haven't made the first one. All right, this happened quickly, but we're gonna get a second crack at it here. All right, here we go. All right, so there's a violation by white. Come on. What should have happened there?
There needs to be someone down low in the block.
Yeah, again, this is like FIBA, I think, so don't worry about where they're positioned, but in terms of the violation that happened, right? So there's 12 in early. What should have happened there? And then let's play through the rest of the shot here.
You should let the basket count because it's a delayed dead ball.
Excellent. Right? Ball went in. No further consequence needed, right?
Yep.
They got what they wanted. The ball, you're not going to award them another shot and say, hey, can you do it again? Because particularly in high school, they probably won't.
Prove it.
Yeah, exactly. Prove it. Last one. Okay. Got a violation here on red 7. Give that man a cigar. So that's the trail coming in and getting that call, which is actually his responsibility. He let the shot go through, and then he came in and said, hang on, we have a violation by the defensive team. We're giving him another free throw. Okay, everybody go with that?
Yep.
How much of a responsibility or option does the ref have to give him a warning before it?
None.
You know what I mean? Like, as they're giving the ball to the shooter, just say, hey man, get out of the 3-point, get behind the 3-point line. Is that?
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. You can do the
habit.
preventative officiating part, right? So before this thing happens, and or if you see one of the kids starting to walk from, they're behind the 3-point line, and they're starting to absent-mindedly walk in front of the 3-point line, I'm okay with you telling them to stop. There might be others who actually would have a different viewpoint of that, because why should you insert yourself into the game there? But you're just keeping trouble out of the equation by doing that. I don't know, Stacy, what do you think about that?
I'm totally with you. I mean, especially if it's early in the game. Now, if you've had to tell them once and they're doing the same thing, then you might want to rethink that. But just in general, don't have that kind of gotcha mentality when you're refereeing.
All right, rule 9-2, throw-ins. Thrower can't leave a designated spot before releasing the ball. And from the rule 4, you know what the designated spot is in terms of it being kind of a 3-foot area. Ball must be touched inbounds or out of bounds before going out of bounds untouched, which is kind of a goofy way to write the rule. But they basically say that for it to be a throw-in violation, once you've released the ball onto the court, if it's touched by somebody, even if that somebody is out of bounds, it's an out of bounds violation as to a throw-in violation, which only comes into play in terms of where you're putting the ball in play. But the ball basically needs to go onto the court. The ball must be released before 5 seconds has elapsed. So not touched in the front court or touched on the court in 5 seconds, but just released in 5 seconds. And the thrower can't carry the ball onto the court, right?
Thrower cannot carry.
Needs to pass the ball onto the court. And the thrower can't be the first to touch the thrown ball inbounds. You'll see some plays where like the defender's got his back to the thrower who's putting the ball in play, and they'll throw the ball off the defender and then come in, get themselves in play and catch the ball. That's fine because they haven't the first to touch the ball inbounds, but you can't just literally throw it to yourself inbounds. And the thrower can't be changed once the ball is at the thrower's disposal, except for after a made basket. So after a made basket, there can be, they could be 5 players out of bounds at the beginning of it. You can have more than one player touch the ball out of bounds, but if it's on a designated throw in, once the thrower has the ball, you can't change throwers. So the ball, when you're passing it in, can't go in the basket, or it can't be lodged in between the ring and the backboard, but being touched by a player. Here, if you're throwing the ball in from out of bounds and you throw it and it gets lodged, it gets stuck in the ring, and people will sit there and say that's a hell ball, jump ball situation, Apparel. It's not. It's a throw-in violation, right? Because the ball hasn't been properly put into play. And then the opponent of the thrower can't break the boundary plane line until the ball's been released, right? So, we always talk, you can hear about, give them space to put the ball in play. As a mechanic, as an official, you'll learn this about telling the player to not, be aware of not breaking the plane until the ball is released. Doesn't even have to touch anybody, but just getting his hands through the plane of the end line is not legal until the ball is released.
Would that be a delay of game?
We're going to get to the penalty here in a second. And then no teammate of the thrower shall be out of bounds once the throw-in begins, which I just talked about. Okay, so penalties for all those throw-in violations. Violations by the throw-in team. Ball's dead. The opponent's awarded the ball at the same spot as the original throw-in. Okay, so you throw the ball all the way down the floor. The ball goes out of bounds without being touched by anybody on the other end line. The ball comes all the way back to the original point of the throw-in, because that's where you put the ball in on every throw-in violation. Okay. Then if you violate the violation of the boundary line play-in by the opponent, the first violation is delay a game warning. If you haven't had a delay a game warning for something else earlier in the game. So like batting the ball away after a made basket would be a delay a game warning. If that had already occurred, this wouldn't be considered a first violation. It would be considered a second violation. But if it's the first delay violation, it's a warning. And then additional violations, it's a team technical foul. It's not a personal, it's not a player technical foul. Yeah, and you'll learn the difference here in Rule 10 next week. It's a team technical foul. So it's not charged against the individual player. It's just charged against the team. So opponents that hit the ball while being held by the thrower out of bounds, technical foul. And opponents hit the thrower, intentional foul. And I have to tell you, I have to remind myself all the time which is which. Hit the ball, it's a technical foul. Hit the thrower, it's an intentional foul. It doesn't happen all that often, but every now and then someone goes through and hits, swipes at the ball or ends up making contact with the thrower. All right, got some clips here to share on that front as well.
'26.
Over and back or not? Want to see it again?
Yes, over and back.
Do we have a yes, it was over and back?
Yes.
Yeah, the player touched it in the front court and then touched it again in the back court.
Is this a backcourt? A player in white who is out of bounds for a throw-in passes the ball to teammate number 32 who muffs the pass in the front court. The ball goes into the backcourt, is recovered by white number 32 who begins.
Actually, you know what? I'm early with this. Hang on one second. We're going to go to the next set. Actually, you know what? Let's go through this.
What you mean.
Come on. Sorry about that.
It's a cool mascot.
Let's keep going. We'll hit rule. We're going to hit those in a second. Okay, rule 9-9. When there's team control in the front court, a player from that team can't be the first to touch the ball in the back court if she or her teammate is the last to touch the ball in the front court. And the key here is when there's team control in the front court. Okay, so that means when you're throwing the ball out of bounds, there's team control, but there's not team control in the front court. The ball's not in play yet. Okay, and then in order to have team control in the front court, you basically need to have player control in the front court. And player control in the front court is defined as either holding or dribbling the ball. Okay, we'll go back to that clip, which I jumped ahead on here for a second when you think about this one along the line. But if you have team control in the front court, you can't be the last to touch in the front court and the first to touch in the back court. Okay.
So then why was that one question from one of the quizzes true about the throwing into the front court?
Well, no, because we're going in reverse there. We're starting in the back court and throwing the ball into the front court. Here we're starting in the front court and having the ball get tipped into the back court.
Okay.
Okay, if the ball is tipped by a defender standing in the front court and is first touched by a player in team control in the back court, there's no violation has occurred. Okay, so the player A1 is dribbling in the front court. A2 is on the other side of the court. They're throwing a pass between A1 and A2. It gets tipped by B1 into the back court. Anybody can go in the back court and go and grab it, and it's not a violation. And then a ball thrown from back court to front court, which returns to the back court without touching a player in the front court, can't be touched by the team in control. Okay. This is actually, this is basically what we talked about with hitting the referee, right? If the ball gets gets thrown from the back court to the front court, hits the referee, comes back into the back court, that player in the back court touches it, it's a violation. Then during a jump ball, a throw in or on defense, a player can jump from the front court, catch the ball in the air and return to the floor with 1 or 2 feet in the back court. It doesn't matter which foot hits first and whether it hits in the front court or the back court. So it's basically an exception here. So you get a throw in, and I got a clip here where we can look at it. You know, a throw in, player jumps in the air from the front court, catches the ball, lands in the back court. It's not a violation. And if he landed with his first foot in the front court and his second foot in the back court, it's still not a violation.
And and also that ball can be taken out from, it has to be on the sidelines though, right?
Could be on the end line.
So it could be on the end line all the way out past half court.
Yep.
Okay.
You wouldn't see it very often where but it's possible to see that.
Yeah. But once a player in the front court were to touch it and then he goes backwards, well, then all bets are off. Then it is a violation.
Once the player has control. Well, again, we're talking about two different things. We're talking about on a throw in where the player jumps in the air.
Right.
And catches the ball while in the air. That player could land with his first foot in the front court and his second foot in the back court and have it not be a violation. That's what we're talking about there.
Okay.
If it was a pass, like if it wasn't a throw in, then that would be a violation.
Right.
This is just the exception on the pass, on the throw in.
So here's the 2 clips again that I had.
26.
Why aren't you running?
26.
Right, let me close out of this again.
26.
Are you seeing this?
Is this a backcourt? A player in white who is out of bounds for a throw-in passes the ball to teammate number 32 who muffs the pass in the front court. The ball goes into the backcourt, is recovered by white number 32, who begins a dribble. This is a legal play since team control was not established in the front court. The official is correct in not ruling a backcourt violation.
Notice the defender screaming at the official that that was over and back. And I'm sure the defender's coach was screaming at the official that it was over and back, as well as half the people in of the 10 people that are in the stands, half of the people in the stands screaming that it was over and back. It's not. It looks funny, but it's not over and back. Okay. Here's another throwing one.
Because the player didn't gain control of the ball.
Right.
And how do we define control? Is that just a judgment call?
There's a definition of what player control is, and it basically says holding or dribbling the basketball.
Okay. I remember that.
All right, so here I've stopped the ball. The player has caught the ball in the air, as we were talking about, jumped in the front, and this is a throw from the end line, right? Has jumped in the front from the front court, lands in the back court. Perfect example of that rule, right? Caught the ball while in the air, and he could have landed with one of his feet in the front court and then had the other foot come down in the back court, and that still would not have been a violation. Clear as mud?
Yeah.
Was there traveling after that though? Because he came down then, and wouldn't his left foot be the pivot foot?
Hang on a second. So I think he. Why are we not back jumping here? So it looks like that is his right foot is what I'm seeing as having landed and as his pivot foot, and then he dribbles. And I would say, don't split hairs on something like that, right? You know, did the left one come down first? Maybe very close, but I wouldn't split hairs on something like that.
Don't be that good, as Penny Davis once told me.
Right. Okay, I got a couple of more clips here.
Play 27.
Hang on. Messing up here. New share. 27.
Anybody think it's
Is this a
a
backcourt
violation?
violation? 22 white gains control of the ball by dribbling it in the front court. His momentum takes him into the backcourt where the dribble continues. This is a backcourt violation.
Tough call, right? You need to determine whether he had control there in the front. Well, actually, that's not that's actually not true. You basically is last to touch in the front court, first to touch in the back court. Tough play happening in real time.
So the only time you're worried about establishing control is in an inbounds pass?
Yep.
Okay.
Play 22. Is this a backcourt violation? A very difficult play.
Yeah, backcourt. Didn't establish herself in the front court.
Number 3 in blue receives a pass and dribbles into the front court, then turns to pass to a teammate. Airborne player number 4 in blue receives the pass and lands in the front court. Is this a backcourt violation? You make the ruling. A good play for discussion.
In my humble opinion, her foot landed in the front court, but
In the front court. A teammate. Number 3 in blue receives the pass and dribbles into the front court, then turns to pass to a teammate.
that right there. Her left foot is in the front court.
Airborne player number 4 in blue receives the pass. And
I don't
lands
think
in
she
the
can
front
leap
court.
ball that way from the back
Is
court
this
to
a
the front
backcourt
court.
violation? You make the ruling. A good play for discussion.
What do you guys think?
I say she was
I pro-
across.
I probably wouldn't call it in the game. I don't know.
Don't be that good.
I think she got front court status personally.
Yeah, same.
Play 20. Is this a legal play?
All right, what do you think?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
Because all 3 points weren't across.
Yep.
right, dribbling the ball, all 3 points got to come across.
His left foot was still in the back.
Number 1 in blue dribbles into the front court with his right foot, but then steps with the left foot in backcourt as he ends his dribble. He then passes to a teammate who was airborne from the backcourt and lands in the front court. This is a challenging play for officials. Players who are dribbling gain front court status when both feet and the ball touch in the front court. On this play, number 1 in blue never achieves front court status before passing to an airborne teammate.
Who, by the way, may have
Who
landed in
also
the
has
front court
backcourt
before
status.
he actually caught the ball too.
This is a legal play.
All right, I think I got one more. Closely guarded, rule 910. So while in the front court, player can't hold the ball or dribble the ball for 5 seconds. So what does that mean? So the player can legally hold the ball for just under 5 seconds, then dribble the ball for just under 5 seconds, then hold the ball for almost another 5 seconds. By the way, this is while being closely guarded, just to be clear, and I probably
Thank you. I
should.
was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I should have done that on the slide, and I didn't. I got it up at the top, but not in the whole thing. So closely guarded within 6 feet, right? The player can start by holding the ball, and you're counting away to 5, and you get to like 4 3/4. Then the player starts dribbling the ball with that same defender 6 feet or less away from them to just under 5 seconds, and then picks up the ball and holds it again as another 5 seconds before he needs to do something with it, or she needs to do something with it, like shoot it or pass it. Everybody understand that?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So 6 feet is, I mean, when it comes to basketball, is pretty far. So how close do refs really consider calling the 5 second rule?
We're horrible at it.
That's a great question.
We're terrible at it. So 6 feet is the distance between the center court line and the restraining circle around the jump ball circle, or between the free throw lane line and the semicircle is 6 feet away, right? We make players get closer. There's not a doubt about it. So it's supposed to be measured from your front foot to the dribbler's front foot. And I would say we're probably more likely to require it to be 4 feet than 6 feet.
Okay.
That, by the way, I'm not saying that that's right, because the rule says 6, but we're not great at it. And you need to be actively guarding, right? You're not, like, if you're just standing there playing no defense whatsoever and you're standing there 6 feet away, you're not closely guarding, because you're not guarding at all.
Yeah.
But if you're actively playing defense at that distance, we should have a 5-second count on.
All right, thanks.
Stacy's really good at making that call. I'm not. All right. I have one closely guarded clip.
The center official in good position recognizes that this is a closely guarded situation.
We actually have 2 trails, but not 1 center, but that's another story.
The official begins his count using his right arm. Let's count with him. It appears that he signals 6 times and then signals a 5-second violation. The stop the clock signal should be utilized, followed by the type of violation, and then indicate the throw-in spot.
He's just trying to cut the guy some slack, praying.
Exactly.
Again, don't be the gotcha referee. When he gets to 4.9 seconds, don't freaking blow your whistle. Just let it finish.
Okay, and then no 5-second counts in the backcourt, because you've got 10-second counts going on in the backcourt, 10 seconds to get the ball into the front court. And you can lose your contract at the college level. We know of people who have done that when they call a 5-second violation in the backcourt. And no 5-second count during an interrupted dribble. So the ball gets tipped away and it's on the floor and they're trying to scramble for the ball. You know, you're not counting, continuing to think that the player is being closely guarded because he no longer has a dribble. So those are the kind of the key Rule 9 violations, or at least the Rule 9 violations that maybe you need to think about a little bit more. Some of the violations like, you know, double dribble or, you know, something along those lines, you need to, and we didn't talk much about traveling, although we did in other places, but you can find those. You need to kind of dive into the rule book and get to those, but these are the ones that maybe are a little bit more of a, you know, I need to think about that a little bit more. Any questions on Rule 9?
Closely guarded? So is there any kind of distance requirement for that? Like if you dribble a certain amount of space, does your count start over or nullify or? So
6 feet away, right, to be closely guarded. And if you can actually be continuously closely guarded by 2 different defenders, if they're all both maintained within 6 feet away or less, and the count will stop when you're either more than 6 feet away, or secondarily, when the player gets their head and shoulders past the defender. So the dribbler drives past the defender and is now by them by definition with head and shoulders by the defender, the count would stop.
There was an old rule,
rule
that said that, you know, once the dribbler got past like the 28-foot line, then you would stop the count or recount. There's none of that anymore. It's just straight up like Steve said.
And that has to be a rule that was 15 years plus ago, because it wasn't never in when I was refereeing.
When I was playing, it was in.
When I was going to say when I was playing, it was in, but not when I was refereeing.
Okay, so as long as they're not passed with their head and shoulders past the defender, it doesn't matter if they go from sideline to sideline, they're still being closely guarded?
Right, or center line to baseline, end line. They're still being closely guarded.
Okay, thank you.
Great, good question. Okay, Rule 3 and Rule 5, we're going to get through pretty quickly again. It's not to say that you don't need to read the rules, but as you're prioritizing your life, these are things that you might be able to lean on your more experienced partner with in your first year. You'll still get quizzed on them, so feel free to dive into the rule book and understand them and read them.
Steve, do you mind if I jump in on something with that closely guarded?
Sure.
Sometimes you'll have a defender closely guarding, and then the offensive player is just dribbling. The defender stands up, backs up, drops his arms. He's still with he's no longer guarding that player. They're just standing there looking at each other. So you can stop your count, restart it when he actually gets active again.
Right, that's fair. The word guarding is a key component here. So if they're not playing defense on them, then they're not, right, you're not entitled to a count. Thanks, Peyton. Okay, so rule 3 highlights. You got to have 5 players to start the game. Although you could show up at a tournament, a rec tournament or whatever, and the director says, no, they can start with 4 and just go with it, just whatever they throw out at you. But from a rule book standpoint, you need 5 to start the game. But you don't need 5 to finish, right? You can technically finish with 1 if it could be demonstrated to you that they could possibly win the game. But most likely at least you probably have 2 players out on the floor to be able to do that, but you do not need 5 players to finish the ball game. Are we clear with that? Substitutions. So substitutions can enter on any dead ball once beckoned by the official, except during free throws, where substitutes come in before or after the last free throw is to be shot. So if there's a 1-on-1 free throw, you don't know whether that first free throw is going to be the last free throw, so you let players come in. Or if it's 2 free throws, you let them in before the second free throw, or you let them in after the last free throw to the extent the free throw is good, because that would make the ball dead. If the free throw was not made, then the ball would not be dead, and substitutes can't come in during a live ball. Okay, once sub 4, a player may not re-enter the game until time has run off the clock, is properly run off the clock. So, they take somebody out and they're like, he starts to sit down on the bench and the coach goes, wait a minute, I don't want him out. I wanted somebody else out. It's too late. He's off the floor, and he or she needs to stay off the floor until the ball has been put in play and the time has run off the clock. So when a coach comes on the floor for an injured player, that injured player needs to leave the game, needs to be substituted for, unless the team asks and gets granted a timeout, and that player can get back out on the floor at the end of the timeout. So they can buy that player to stay in the game by calling a timeout. And a player who's bleeding or has blood on their uniform must leave the game unless the situation is corrected. We've become a little less crazed about this rule. They basically just need to clean the jersey so that it's, as best as they can. And they need to stop the bleeding on their body to the extent that they're bleeding. And then they can come back into the game. And then the important one here is a player exhibiting concussion signs needs to be removed from the game and then checked by medical personnel, who will then clear them or not to play. So it's not up to the referee to decide whether that person is fit to be back in the game. It's the medical personnel that are at the game that makes that decision. They put them back into the game. Our job then again is to observe whether they're showing signs of concussions. And if they do, we remove them again. But then it's back to the medical personnel. So we're not playing doctor. All we're doing is saying, hey, this kid doesn't look right. Please take him out and figure out if he's okay or not.
Will there always be medical personnel there to give that clearance?
If there's not, then the kid is out of the game for good, right? Now, again, you're in rec games with, player coaches and parents getting involved, and it's not, and the kid didn't like fall on his head and pass out. He just kind of like got hit a little bit. You want him to get out of the game and get checked. If that coach then becomes the responsible party for putting him back in that rec game, we're okay with that. We're not making that judgment. Okay. But in a high school, National Federation rules, if there wasn't a medical professional at the game, that player would not be able to return. Okay. So that's substitutes. And then, apparel, there's a whole bunch of stuff on what makes a legal uniform and what colors you can use for your headbands and wristbands and sleeves. And it's the thing that I think most officials hate the most about being the fashion police. Read it and learn it. I'm not going to go over it here, and you're not going to worry about it in your first couple of years, because you're going to see all sorts of things going out there. You're going to be happy to have 5 players with kind of the same color uniform on. you know, when you're doing like a freshman game or a JV game, they've got hand-me-downs. You might have a JV game where one kid's wearing a varsity uniform while playing on the JV team. Just roll with it, right? The thing I highlighted here more than anything is don't let a kid out on the floor that has equipment or apparel which you think is dangerous or inappropriate. Be careful with things like, you know, religious or cultural headwear. You know, it's soft coverings or whatnot. Roll with it, right? It's like, okay. But, you know, hard covering, hard casts, beads in the hair, earrings, you know, jewelry, that kind of thing. Don't allow that to play. It's, you know, keep the safety issue in mind. Keep yourself out of trouble and keep the kids safe and keep yourself out of trouble. Maybe I should put it in that priority. Keep the kids safe and keep yourself out of trouble by not allowing them to wear those things. And to me, that would be the thing I would most highlight in equipment and apparel and the like in the rule book. Any questions? Cool. On to rule 5. Scoring and timing regulations. You know, the stuff in the rule about, you know, 3 points and 2 points, and you'll figure that part out. You already know it for the most part. You know, rule 5.7, extra period. So we're playing 4 quarters. In some of your games, you may be playing 2 halves. You may be playing running clock. You may be playing stop clock. You may be playing 6 minutes. You may be playing 8 minutes. Just go with what they tell you the rule is. Think about, you know, so when you go to overtime, overtime is considered an extension of the 4th quarter, right? So kind of all things remain the same. We're still going in the same direction. We're having a jump ball to start the overtime, but we're still going in the same direction. And if you screw it up and everybody goes in the wrong direction, fix it once you get it going in the right direction. Once you realize that you got it wrong. I can remember one game early in my career where we screwed it up. We were going in the wrong direction. We literally didn't kind of catch it for the first probably minute. And then when we went to catch it, both coaches looked at me and said, please don't make us go in the other direction again, because we'll screw up all our players. And I'm like, okay with me. And we kind of stayed with it. But the rule says fix it once you've learned about it. Okay. So you shoot the same basket, and the team fouls don't reset. So, you know, if you had 6 fouls in the second half, you have 6 fouls to start the overtime period as well. Okay. And timeouts. When can a timeout be granted? Only players on the court or the head coach may request a timeout. So team members on the bench, assistant coaches on the bench can't call timeouts, or shouldn't be granted timeouts if they're requesting it. And timeout should only be granted when the ball is dead or when there's player control for the team in player control or at the disposal of the player. So the team that's in team control or player control, dribbling the basketball, holding the basketball, can call timeout. The other team obviously can't. If the ball is being passed, you shouldn't grant a timeout at that point in time until it becomes player control again, right? So ball held or being dribbled by a player. A live ball held or being dribbled by a player is the definition of player control. Any questions on that? I think I'm done.
Look at that. Well done, Steve. Anybody have any questions for Steve?
So did anybody kind of look at the chat? Do we have anything in here that
I looked at a couple things. I think mostly I answered the ones that needed answering, and I didn't understand Peyton's and no contact between players' elbows. I wasn't sure what that meant, so I didn't answer it. But everything
sorry,
else,
Stacy. We're talking about the foot not breaking the plane of any of the boundaries of players on the line or on the lane. What you get a lot is players throwing elbows and trying to preliminarily box out their opponent next to them. I just toss that out there as something to
right?
watch.
So that's contact, right? That could be illegal contact as well.
Yeah.
For sure.
Also, I seen one of the bullet points on there that said the shooter on a free throw cannot cross the line until the ball touches the rim. When I played, I feel like, and I may be wrong, but I feel like the ball could touch the backboard, and it doesn't necessarily have to touch the rim before the free thrower can leave the line.
It's
have
the
to
rim,
touch-
not the backboard.
It's
So
the
if
rim.
it bounce, I mean, again, we're splitting hairs a little bit, right? So if it hits the backboard and then it hits the rim, it's when it hits the rim that the player can cross the line.
Okay.
Okay. Please finish up quizzes 1, 2, and 4 if you have not done them. And go ahead and complete 3, 5, and 9, the rules that Steve went over tonight, because we will be going over the most missed questions next Monday when we have our next Zoom session. And if you get stuck on things, if you could take the time to look them up in the books, again, you'll probably learn more than if you just take a wild guess. You'll never remember because you never had any logic when you just guessed. So, but just try to get them done. Okay. I'd like to see a little more participation in those.
And if you get to the point where you're deciding to be a rule junkie and you're deep into the weeds and you can't figure something out, or you've got questions along the line, reach out to one of us. We're happy to talk to you about it. Not a problem. We have these conversations among ourselves all the time.
Because we're just a bunch of geeks.
We are a bunch of geeks.
Okay, anybody else? Don't forget, we also have another on-court session on Thursday at the JCC. We're gonna finish covering most of the content. And then the following week, we'll finish up whatever we have to and probably do a lot of reviewing because we've gone through stuff pretty quickly. And then we're gonna get out on the floor. So yeah, it goes fast.
You'll be seasoned vets in no time.
That's right. Okay, Alston, are you on the call? Yeah. Did you talk to the coach there at Ingram to find out if we could do any scrimmages there?
Yes, and he hasn't replied yet. I will get back to you once he replied me. 'Cause I
Perfect.
emailed. Yep.
That'd be great. Thank you. Anybody else know anybody who's practicing, whether it be AAU teams or school teams that are actively practicing? Let me know so that we can maybe use one of their practices as a scrimmage opportunity for you guys. Okay, you got anything else, Steve?
I don't.
All right.
I'll
Everybody-
ask around about that. I'll see if I can, there's some AAU stuff going on, shoot 360, some different things. I'll ask.
That'd be great, because that's
Okay.
what we need. We just need you guys to get out there and run a little bit.
Okay, you got it.
All right.
See, this Thursday, it's 7 to 8:30. Is that right? Or should we start earlier?
No, 7 to 8:30 every week. Every Thursday.
Roger, you can show up at 6:15 again if you want to.
Okay.
Okay, everybody. We'll catch you in a couple days.
Yep.
Ciao.
Thank you.
And Steve, thanks once again.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
Steve.